yeah. Feel that. When it's time to fall into place, well, we're drifting in and out now while you decorate the space. Vacant, but not pleasantly at all. String enough moments together for something you can your own that's yours. That is the song Fade by Oliver Beardmore. Hello, everyone. My name is W.A.K. William, host of the High Art on the Edge page. Thank you for tuning in for this very special event. I'm very proud and honored to have a guest all the way from East London, Oliver Beardmore. Oliver, how are you?
Not too bad. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Hello to everyone. If you are tuning in, let us know where you're patching in from. We'd love to know whereabouts. And if you have any questions during this conversation, feel free to put them in the comments box. Oliver will get to them as best as possible. Oliver, I understand you had a show last night. How'd that go?
Yes, it was. Oh, it's great. I think given circumstances, I think it went as well as we could possibly have asked for. Really, opening for October Drift with Car Park as well as the other support, who's a T-shirt I'm currently wearing. Um, Both fantastic sets, also really nice people. So yeah, I just had a lovely night. Really, couldn't really ask for too much more.
And where was this show?
It was at Colours, Colours Hoxton, so formerly known as Hoxton Bar and Kitchen or something. It was. So I've actually played there a few years before, and I played very badly. So it was nice to have a little shot at like redemption, I guess, basically.
Nice. And did you have a good sized audience there?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was sold out. I think there must have been. I don't know how many people were in for my room, but it felt pretty full. But I know by the end it was near on 300 people, so pretty cool.
And I imagine you played your new single, Fade.
Yeah, no, it was really nice to play it and be like, oh well, next time like people here they'll come to this, it'll actually be out because I've been playing it now for sort of 4 or 5 months. I actually recorded it exactly a year ago today, so it's really nice that yeah, it's been kicking around for a while, but no one else has known about it, so it's really nice that it's actually out and about.
Have you been receiving some nice responses?
Yeah, some people have been very like complimentary on it. I think I've made like quite a big deal of this one mainly because it's my favorite, like rather
Yeah.
than any other good reason. But no, I think it's a really good it's a good mix of like all of the things that I think I think it's one of my most like me tunes. It's like it's really got a bit of everything that I like, and it's not kind of a straight clone of anything. Like, not that I'm in the business of that too much anyway, but do you know what I mean? I think some songs you write where you're like, "Oh, I really want to do my version of this, and then other times it's like, no, this it very much so came about as its own thing. So I think I'm quite pleased with it in that way.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing a more in depth analysis of that song and for our audience to play it and enjoy that on their own device. I've had some really nice conversations with you before this event and just learning about who you are. And I want to go back to when you were a child and that experience and growing up in Birmingham, England. What was that environment like in terms of just your parents, siblings, schooling, anything you want to share?
It's Birmingham's an interesting place. Like, I think um, it's never really marketed itself particularly well, because I think historically, really, it's a city of like people who came to do stuff, um, and I think in the sort of I guess post six, it's built on the car industry really, and you think about um, the sort of super highways, really, the way that everything's up on some of the bits are up on stilts, all these tunnels, like this big racetrack kind of vibe. So it's a really interesting place. It's not. I don't think really there's any other place in England that's particularly like it. I mean, obviously every city is unique in its own way, but um, no, it's sort of like it will always be home for me. And it's funny because neither of my parents are actually originally from Birmingham, um, but so I think they're almost like, oh, it's home for you, is it? It's like, yeah, which like not in a negative way at all, but obviously like I guess it must be strange when you like are from somewhere else before. But no, I've got a lot of love for the place. Really, I go back a lot. Like when I was growing up as well, like it had an interesting music scene. Like I love Peace, who were sort of coming out around about 2012. So yeah, there's a lot of really positive things. I think people kind of rag on it a little bit unnecessarily, and I feel like sure there are like ugly bits and sort of unsightful like first impressions like to be had, but at the same time, I think if you dig a bit deeper, it does have some really interesting stuff going on. I do like it a lot, really.
How did your parents play a role in your love for music?
Well, actually, I've been pretty instrumental. I mean, I started playing the violin when I was really young. My mum played before me, and I think that was really important. Like we were involved in orchestras and like group playing, and I actually did this. I guess this is probably the most significant thing actually in some ways. It's like I don't know if you would have ever heard of it, but there's this sort of violin techniques and also extends to other instruments called like Suzuki, where you don't learn with music for the first few years. I can't remember exactly how long. So the whole point is you learn everything by ear. And obviously, I then later learned to read music on the violin, a bit less proficient on the guitar, but that's very much like how I've always kind of like learned everything and done stuff, and I think in every aspect of life really. So I think that's pretty, yeah, it's sort of like I've sort of what I've always done really, I guess.
Did you fight playing the violin, or do you just accept it?
Well, I did. I remember really clearly, and I must have been really young, but maybe like 5 or something. But I remember the day that I got the violin. Um, I ran around the house playing it like a guitar. So I think there's maybe that was a bit of a foreshadowing there.
Yeah. And you have siblings, correct?
Yeah, yeah,
And they enjoy music as much as you do?
yeah. One of them played the violin, the other one played the cello. So we all like string orchestra and stuff all over the shop, really.
So where are you in the order of siblings?
I'm the eldest.
And how does that feel?
Well, I mean, I've never known anything else, I guess, but I guess it feels how it does. Like, um, I feel like my younger sister was very good at the violin as well. Actually, ended up overtaking me on grades at one point. I wasn't very happy about that, and I was obviously
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I can't believe they're holding me back." Like, honestly, like, the establishment's really against me. It was ridiculous, but no. And I started playing the saxophone as well, and I managed to get over the fact that she was absolutely starting on me, so it was all good. I mean, I've never really seen it as too much of a competition. It's just that's one of those things you think about when you're 11.
Sure. Well, I understand you participated in a choir.
Yeah, I used to sing for Birmingham Cathedral choir as a treble back in the day, which is technically my first ever job. Um, and that was it's a great building. That is really cool. And I've obviously always been involved in classical music, and I do think again pretty like it's funny. It's something that I used to do like multiple times a week. I'd be there like doing all the services and stuff, and um, like massive kind of effort really at that time, and now I haven't set foot in that place for years. It'd be quite strange, I think, going back if I did.
Did you enjoy school
Um, yeah, I'd,
as
I'd say
you know,
so. Sorry, what did you say?
as a younger person? Did you enjoy school?
Yeah, I think I always kind of just like felt like I should had better things to do on some level. But I do like I'm very appreciative of my education really. And I'm glad that I sort of like stuck with it long enough to have like the qualifications that I do. Um and I loved history. I thought history was great. I had some really nice history teachers over the years as well. Maths, despite having some really nice teachers, to be fair, I never really gelled with that very much. But yeah, I think like I was must have been like 12 or 13. And I was kind of like, you know what, music, and yeah, I was just always thinking about other things in lessons. I was just sort of like, I know everyone says this, but you know what I mean. Like it'll be like someone's trying to tell you about, I don't know, like geopolitical state of Uganda, and you're sort of thinking, oh well, that Led Zeppelin concert I watched on YouTube was quite good last night. Like,
Yep, I've been there before. So you don't have to name the teacher, but I want you to think of a teacher that you really gelled with and connected to.
yeah.
What would you give me a word or two how they would describe you?
Oh, I don't know. I think maybe like curious would probably be one. I used to, if I was interested in something, I'd ask all the questions. If I wasn't, then I wouldn't ask anything at all. I think that's probably a pretty good sort of, yeah, sums it up really.
So when did music really start to grab hold of you in terms of the way you listen to it? Was there a particular album? Was there a particular band? Uh, Let us know about that.
Um, I I think my dad had a John Lennon confirmation in the car, and that was definitely a big thing when I was younger. And I remember like Mind Games, and obviously Imagine, like, but I think particularly Mind Games is, I think, the standout track. I remember listening to that, and that album, the production on it is just like it aged so well. I listened to it a few weeks ago for the first time in a while, and I think that was like I used to love listening to that stuff in the car. Um, and I think that was my first sort of real exposure before like your own personal iPod, which came in a few years later. And then I started like rinsing the pop music on the charts and stuff, which, to be fair, was the best possible time for me to be doing that. But I remember buying like TikTok on iTunes, and um, what else would have been like rolling around then, like sort of any of that, like Jason Derulo, like Kelly Clarkson, like Black Eyed Peas kind of era of stuff. And I mean, they all just slap. So yeah. But then I got back into kind of um, one that, yeah. Sorry, I've just gone massively off track. But I think some of the first albums I bought um, was like the Blur compilation. Um, Probably like either one of the first Arctic Monkeys albums, and Hot Fuzz, the Killers album. I never remember, not the film. You know what
Mhm.
I you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, I think they were the first few, and then like from that I was like, okay, well this is definitely something I could do more.
It's and just on a side note, it's amazing how the Killers, that band, I mean, hugely popular here in America, but it seemed like the UK just fully embraced them from
Mm.
the minute go.
Well, I mean, there's the famous story of like people thinking they were from the UK, like a lot of sort of misquoted in articles and stuff. And so and they've weirdly kind of, they really set the foundation for that. I know the Strokes are sort of the forefathers of that particular movement, um, but they really set the tone, I think, for the rest of the kind of the decade musically. So
Just want to interrupt here. A couple people have made some really nice comments. Vapor Trail says, just played Fade for the first time and love it. Really nice work, Oliver. I'll be
oh, thank
putting
you
it
very
on the
much.
next show.
Oh,
Very
thank you
cool.
very much.
Oh, we have a Chrissy Vanderwood. Hello, Chrissy. She says, hi, Oliver and William. Hand clap. I am such a fan of your music and happen to see you were on while I have a little break. I'll have to rewatch from the beginning on a replay. Congrats on the new release. Fire emoji. You're a brilliant talent and one of my fave artist discoveries in the past year. That's some high praise from you.
It's indeed. Oh, that's very nice of you to say. Thank you very much.
It's very cool. Okay, so we talked now. Did you have any indelible concert experiences that really stuck with you?
Um, I used to go to loads of classical concerts and
Okay.
obviously play in them, and I always loved that. Like, I think the feeling of being in like an orchestra when you're like playing in a massive venue and with like a really like cool acoustic, it just really puts you in a certain kind of mental space. And I think even like from quite a young age, I was like, this is definitely a really interesting feeling. It felt like a real kind of the high you get from it is obviously like on the superficial level, but really sort of a step out of kind of reality. And it's not all just for the escapism, but I think it's a sort of those kind of moments where you do sort of like draw back from everything else you do, I think are quite important really to keep yourself moving really in the long run. So I think that might have been what I sort of initially dragged me towards it. But I was actually really late going to pop music concerts. I didn't go, my first concert was the Libertines, so I must have been like 15 or something.
Where was that show?
That was at whatever the NIA arena in Birmingham is now called. It changes names about once every 5 minutes, but the sort of, I guess, the bigger venue in Birmingham. It was a good show actually. That.
I remember growing up, and particularly during my high school, teenage years, I had some struggles with anxiety, a slight depression, if you will. Did you ever deal with anything when you were younger?
Yeah, I used to be quite like socially anxious. I'd say like arguably in certain circumstances I still can be now, but I love meeting new people, and like I certainly feel like a sort of a relative sense of sort of self confidence. So I wouldn't say it's something that affects me in the same way as it did when I was younger. But yeah, I used to be terrified of meeting new people, and especially adults. I used to be really scared of. Uh,
Why?
I don't really know. I think it was the sort of like when you're like that weird in between age and you can't quite like you can do your best to engage with them on their terms, but regardless of what you do, they might not really care about your terms, and that's completely fair. Like, I've got other things to do. So I think it's sort of this weird halfway house of like how kind of like how authentic the conversation actually is. You're kind of like you're like, oh, I don't want to be like burdening you, and it's just a bit of a bizarre kind of do you know what I mean? Because you're obviously sort of you're existing in their space. Really, it's
Right?
a bit of a funny one.
The so how do you think you kind of outgrew that, matured past that?
Uh, I don't really know. I think kind of like getting older, like making more friends and stuff, like doing more social experiences, like sort of just plowing through. Really, I think like as well, like the people who were around me at the time in that kind of age, like actually did kind of be like, no, no, you're coming to this, like. And at the time, I hated people dragging me to stuff like that, but like I very quickly started to thank them for it. So.
Is there a relative, or was there a relative that you really that had a big impact on you? Aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa?
Um, to be fair, I quite like all of my extended family, really.
Nice.
If I pick anyone, one of my uncles has a very interesting music taste,
Okay.
so that's cool. Um, and um, another one was always just very interested in kind of what we were doing, which is obviously like as a young child, and you get to tell someone what you're doing. It's quite exciting, isn't it? So.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'd say they were definitely good. And my grandparents as well always been very kind of keen to see what I was doing musically, so that's always nice as well.
I understand that you enjoy movies, and there's one in particular that you love called
Oh
Lost
yeah,
in Translation.
that's the one.
Yeah, so why is that the one?
I think it just portrays like this sort of universal emotion like so well, and I'd never really seen like I was like, oh, I felt like that for like, and that's depicted so well there. And I think it was just it's particularly like something that I related to, or like on a personal level, and I'm sure obviously clearly many other people do. Is why it's a cult classic, but like, well, more than a cult classic, but um, yeah, and the cinematography is beautiful, and the soundtrack is just like, I mean, sometimes it's probably my favorite song ever, and just hearing that like deployed in a film setting where it's like the song still like stands on its own so beautifully, but like when it's sort of brought into that, and I didn't feel it was compromising the song in any way. It was just they were both just added to each other, like the scene in the taxi where they're driving around, and the karaoke bit on More Than This as well, like, and just the whole soundtrack is sublime. Like, yeah, I think that and Train Spotting are probably like the two films that had sort of the biggest impact on me. What are your favorites, by the way?
Oh boy, we could be here forever because I'm a big cinephile. So, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson,
Yeah,
Dead Poets Society, um, definitely Train Spotting, The Godfather. We could go La Strada. So I did grow up Jaws,
oh,
and
Jaws is
Superman.
fantastic.
Yeah, I grew up with these movies. Halloween, the horror movie, the first one, really, really had an impact on me. Um, but yeah, Train Spotting, I was very fortunate because when I was in London in 96 when it came out, I think, um, there was such a buzz around that movie.
Yeah,
And my brother and I just happened to get to London right when it was released. And so we went to, I think it was the Odeon somewhere in the heart of like London. And it was a packed house. Those first, when Iggy Pop song comes on,
yeah. When the foot hits the pavement in time with the
yes,
first beat from Lust
I
Alive,
mean,
that's
it's
just
brilliant. I mean, the way that thing was shot and edited, very Scorsese like.
mm,
I know. But anyway, so those that sitting in that at that time with an audience that was so primed and pumped to see that movie, it was incredible. And I remember when the movie was over, I mean, there's thunderous applause, thunderous. So great movies. Uh, how do you stay so fit? What do? You work out? You run? What do you do?
um. Well, I mean, most recently I just get chest infections and then don't eat. But yeah, I I run a fair amount. I used to do like a lot of exercise. I sort of don't do quite as much anymore, but not so much of a gym goer as I was about a year ago. But I like running quite a lot, and I've always been into athletics, and I like going to the gym when I'm kind of in the zone for it. Um, can be good, but obviously if you go and wait like half an hour to use any equipment, not really like that like nice release you're sort of hoping for. So does depend.
How did COVID affect you?
Oh, COVID was weird. It felt like going back in time. It was really strange. I guess the age that sort of me and like the sort of contemporaries around like my age were as well. It's like you're kind of finished or just finishing uni. Most people sort of like just before or just as they've started working. And I was doing a music masters at the time, and you sort of obviously you've kind of you haven't really skipped a beat like since leaving school, and you've gone and lived somewhere else for uni in my case, and then moved to London to do a masters, and yeah, it was. Then you move back home, and everyone's also back home. And actually, it was really nice to spend the time with family. Really, I guess it's sort of a moment that not everyone necessarily gets. So I think that will always be like a real positive of it. But it was strange. It really forced me to kind of rethink everything in terms of music as well. And that's when I basically sort of focused what I was doing and went down the more shoegaze route, because I was like, well, this is the music I sort of always kind of wanted to make, but once I discovered it, but I just didn't realize I could.
Bingo. Perfect. Let's talk about that. So, uh, do you remember that album or that song that kind of opened the door for shoegaze?
What, this one?
Holy smokes! You're
Yeah.
out that juggernaut, which
Yeah.
we'll definitely get into later. But so that's the one, huh?
I think my I lived with a really good friend of mine. Well, my whole house actually at uni all had very like all listened to a lot of music, all in their own different ways. But one of my friends, especially, is a couple of years older and had a really impressive record collection. And he was sort of like, "Oh yeah, listen to this," and everything he sort of showed me like before. I always thought this is all really good, and I was just like, "What is this?" And I'd actually heard bits of it before, but to sit down and listen to it in its entirety, I think I actually heard Slow before I heard Loveless, but then I listened to Loveless in its entirety, and I was just like, "Wow." And I was just sitting there and my bed, like really hungover, just like Well, this is pretty much it. Honestly, I must have listened to it like 3 times a day for not quite every day, but for about 2 weeks. It was insane. It really kind of like reignited my like creative horizons really. I think I got very pigeonholed into the whole kind of UK indie thing for a bit, and like I think that was just me trying to figure out something I felt comfortable doing and trying to fit into to something. And really, like that's not kind of now I look at it now, even though I was obsessed with that stuff back in the day. I obviously will have always a fond memory of it, but this sort of felt everyone, and people say it now. They're like, "Oh, well, this feels like you," and I was kind of like, "Yeah, it does in some ways, anyway." I mean, I'm never going to limit myself only to shoegaze, but I think it's definitely a big part of like how I experience music and um, connecting to people and stuff. It's important.
So you listen to My Bloody Valentine. I've interviewed many people where they have announced very happily that album and its impact. What is it about that album or that sound that really resonates with you?
I think it's this like horizonless production. I mean, sort of it's because the other album I obviously was turned on to at the same time was Slovakia, um, which again like I'd heard bits of before, but never sort of really tried to actively listen to in that way. And that's obviously this sort of massive soundscape kind of thing. Like there's so much reverb on some of those guitars, you can't even tell what they are. And it's that same kind of like distortion of sound, but in with a completely different kind of like physical experience with Loveless. Like it's really you're inside the record rather than it being kind of at this expanse in front of you, I guess. Um, and like obviously only shallow. Like you, I think everyone who listens to that track must have some kind of reaction if they hate it or love it. But and then the album just goes on. And the first time I heard Sometimes, I was just like, I can't really overstate how much that song means to me. Really, like it. It's been yeah, the coping mechanism song, like good times song. Just I think it's just an amazing piece of music in terms of the emotions it like brings out.
Can you hold up that album cover again? So if you look at the front here, you spin around your way. What is it about that album cover that I mean it's very iconic, but it's very like simple,
Mm.
but people love that. So what is it about that album cover that you appreciate?
Well, I think like it's very like it's quite honest in a way. Like it's the bending arm bending on the jazz master is obviously one of many parts, but one of the sort of I guess like signature aesthetic like sort of traits of that album and the color on it and everything. It's just that's how the record sounds. And I think if you look at that image and watch the music, it kind of listen to the music kind of makes sense if you know what I mean. It just really like it's a great marriage. Um, and I think with video and any kind of extra medium adding to music, I mean, I've always sort of believed the music should be enough on its own, but when you I think when you pair them together, you can really either sort of enhance the thing that you've already gone for, or really try and provide like an alternate kind of experience as well. I think, especially with video, that's something that people do. So I'm certainly in for album covers that look like this sound.
I can't wait to hear more about your other albums that have inspired you. I'm W, by the way, aka William, host of the High Art on the Edge page. Thank you for tuning in. I'm having a lovely chat here with East London, Oliver Beardmore. So I want to start getting to your music as an artist, if you don't mind, and tell us a little bit about when you realize, okay, I'm on this path now. Here's the trajectory. I'm ready to go down that road. And tell us a little bit about your EP.
As in when I sort of went to this kind of aesthetic
Yes.
of songs and production. Sure. Yeah, I think from as soon as I heard that kind of stuff, I went out and bought a Jaguar because I wanted a new guitar, and this would have been a few years before. And I sort of played all sorts of stuff on that Jaguar that wasn't shoegaze, but I was straight away really attracted to the sort of the trem arm and all of that kind of stuff. Um, and I sort of had the tool already, really, even though I was playing like covers of sort of the Undertones and David Bowie on it. as well as like my own stuff at the time. But and then yeah, I got to lockdown and I sort of started messing around with actually. So I before this, I sort of went a bit into that kind of Tame Impala world of sort of that like psych like 60s revival kind of thing, and I played with guy who now plays for a band called Duckwax, actually, and Archie Chamberlain played bass for me for a show, and we sort of jammed quite a bit when I first moved to London. And he like really just introduced me to sort of multi-effects pedals, and I sort of never really cared about them that much. And he was like, "Oh yeah, look what you can do." And then he sort of set up my presets for me for this show, and we did this kind of super like psyche. We covered Half Glass Full of Wine, like all that kind of stuff. And I was like that, and that kind of set me on the path, I think. And then during lockdown, I was just sort of like, and leading up to it as well, I was like, well, this is the music I've always wanted to make since I heard these records. Let's sort of give it a go. And then it sort of felt like I wasn't like pretending to be anything else anymore.
How exciting! How'd your parents feel that you were moving in that direction?
Well, funnily enough, my mum was initially a bit resilient to it. She's like, I can't hear the words. And I was like, yeah, fair. It's how it goes, isn't it?
That is good stuff. Okay, so then what was the first song you released?
So Fiesta was the first one of that kind of batch. And we remixed that song so many times. We did it all on tape. Which is a bit of a hybrid approach actually, but like a lot of it was done on tape. And I was so happy with that song just because like it's exactly kind of how I always sort of heard it in my head, and it's the first time I think ever that I'd like got that from my idea to it sounding how I wanted it to sound completely. And yeah, I was just like, that is exactly the emotion that like was in that song. And I'm still to this day, I'm like, I didn't actually play it the other day, but very happy with that song. It'll always like be a special one, I think.
Is it hard listening to any bits about not sinking yet floating? Do you wish to ever go back and go, oh, I would change that or make some arrangements?
Well, I was on a bit of a Morrissey kick about being anti-harmony.
Yeah.
Don't really know why, but yeah, I wish I'd sort of been a bit more receptive to suggestions of doing more harmonies and stuff. Like, I think it's cool having certain. I think you can overdo it. Like, I think just hearing one voice can be like as powerful as hearing loads. But at the same time, yeah, I'd say that's one thing. And I think just in general, I learned a lot about like effects and like all the time I spent in the studio kind of between then. I think my approach to certain things would have been slightly different, but I'm very happy with those records considering the circumstances they were done with it under as well. Like, to be honest, they're all like, I think there's something good in all of them for sure. Yeah, this is my favorite.
Tell us a little bit about it.
So this one, it was like, again, I really wanted to do just a bit more of a long form thing because I'd always kind of I still want to do more music like that, but obviously sort of the game doesn't really like lend itself to stuff like that very often. Then you sort of got to go, well, I just want to do it anyway. And now we play it at every single show and it's a must play. But really wanted to go for that sort of slow dive Radiohead kind of Pink Floyd like capitulation at the end, and like this massive kind of like wash of sound. And I'm also really happy with the lyrics in that song. I think they're some of my favorite, the simplest yet like best ones I've ever done, actually. You can't really hear them, they're not really the forefront of the song, but that's kind of also the point of them. So yeah, I'm really happy with Closer, especially how it's like taken on a new life live with Patrick, who's been playing guitar recently, and really sort of added his own like flavor to it, and it's really taken it up a level.
It's some wonderful tracks here, and with the heavens on your side, did you play this last night?
No, that's the one track actually that I do have a little bit of a grudge against, really. I think it didn't quite turn out how I was kind of expecting it to, and I think I wrote that song a really long time before it was recorded. I think I wrote that in sort of 2016.
Okay.
Um, so I think I was always a bit trying to make it something it wasn't. So I think maybe that's why that happened.
Are you overly obsessive about the just the production aspect on it? Do you just spend hours going back and listening, fine tuning?
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I'm currently working with someone who is like I think very good at kind of understanding what I'm going for straight away, and we come up with a lot of the sort of textures together, and like I think I know that he knows what I'm going for straight away, so I'm not kind of ever like initially when you first start working with someone, I think you're kind of like, oh, are you considering this? Do you know this? Do you know this? Do you know this? Because
Yeah.
obviously you're kind of entrusting a bit of yourself really to someone in that way. But now I'm kind of like I'm a bit more like it's more kind of me looking at my own performances in the songs, like, oh, could I like redo that? Like, is that syntax like a bit weird? Like, could I change the phrasing? Could I have sung that line better? All of that kind of stuff. Um, I think that's more the sort of the focus, and but it really for me, it's all like these textures. They all just have their different kind of emotional timbre, and that's the thing I love so much about, and I'm sure it's the same for you. Like this kind of music, it's like you've got this like songwriting and stuff which is like all great even on its own, but once you add these extra elements in, it's really like it can sort of just take you to all of these different places that I think is quite unique.
The way you describe music, I'm sitting here nodding my head, and I probably look like a little I'm just doing this the whole time because you're nailing it. It's exactly how I feel, and it's really the way you are able to characterize and provide details, and the way that it affects you is pretty amazing. And I think if people have a hard time, they have an easy time listening to music, but they have a hard time describing how they feel to it. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I think definitely. Like, I mean, you think about the kind of the words that, when you look at someone, you say that was a bit like zingy or like something like that, and it obviously like you catch the third person, you're like, what on earth did we just say? But you'll both look at each other, but we both know what we mean. So
Right.
it's I think it's really difficult because you're basically describing kind of like emotions really in some ways, but they're more like sort of emotion in a certain location or something. I don't know. It's very difficult to like to pinpoint like what kind of characteristic that sound has, and exactly like the mesh of what it like the kind of like the thing it more might like remind you of internally with kind of its sort of more like universal like application, I guess.
So we've arrived now to a song called Fade. And do you want to set it up on the tee for us before we actually listen to it?
Sure. What shall I
Anything you want? Like, how long were you working on the song?
Oh,
Um,
so I'm with you. Um, that chord sequence actually, I was playing for probably about a year before I record. Maybe like a bit less than that, but yeah, I was super happy with the chord sequence. It's got some really nice chords in, which at the time was a bit of a first for me, to kind of string them together like that, um, and be like, oh, I'm really happy with the whole kind of instrumental passage before I even started on the melodies and stuff. Um, so I think that was a big thing. I was playing in my room, just like, oh, this is so good. And I think like I was just very happy with it like that. The melody took a really long time to come. Actually, really didn't fall easily. Actually, but that's kind of how that sometimes it falls instantly. Sometimes you have to really battle with it.
at home right now, I'd like everyone to find the song Fade by Oliver Beardmore. You can find it on pretty much any platform right now, Spotify, Apple. Um, and what we're going to do is when I say hit it, is what HI stands for. You're going to hit play on your device at home. You will not hear the music through this conversation. We're going to mute our screen so you don't get any of that distorted feedback. When I say hit it, you're going to hit play. And then what you can do is chat with Oliver in the comment box. Let us know how you're feeling about this song. How do you connect to it? Is it something in the lyrics? Is it something in the melodies? Whatever. Is it the intro, the bridge, the outro? We just want to hear from you. If you have any questions for Oliver, feel free to put them in the comments box. And yeah, I'm super excited. This is Fade. So get it all loaded up, everyone. And then Oliver, when I say hit it, you can obviously listen to the song in its entirety for the upteenth time and enjoy. This is what, 4 minutes, 23 seconds?
Something like that, give
Okay.
or take.
All right, everyone. So we're going to listen to the brand new single by Oliver Beardmore. It is called Fade. Don't forget to hit play when I say hit it, and then let us know how you're feeling in the comment box. All righty, here we go. Hit it. Woo! That was Fade by Oliver Beardmore, brand new single. How'd that feel?
Not too bad listening to it again. I thought I'd give it a little spin.
Tell us a little about the song in terms of the arrangements.
You've got like a sort of it's like a pure rhythm sort of chorusy guitar kind of thing coming through like a PV chorus, which is a really interesting kind of amp. Like a sort of a crustier version of a JC. And then I think there might be some maybe the other tracks they're just the sort of more lead bit might have been done on actual JC. But yeah, bit of that. I really like the sort of integration of there's a lot of drum machines in this track and like bits, but obviously with sort of the real drums themselves. So I think that kind of feel of like the human and like the quite sort of I don't know, sort of inhuman like nature of drum machines, like a sort of quite an important bit of the sort of pushing and pulling against each other, I guess.
Were there any components to this song that you were really struggling with? Lyrically, anything going on with the music that you just had a tough time?
The chorus, if you will, it's kind of like a false chorus or sort of a pre-chorus chorus. I was really unsure about it. It's actually my like favorite bit of the song. I just didn't really like have faith in it initially, and then I sort of like actually sang the lyrics over the top, and I was like, no, I really feel this. I was sort of like, I don't know, this. It's really funny. I look back and it's like, now how could it have ever been anything else? But at the time, it was like I had this other chorus that I wanted to use, which might have been a bit too cure like, really, even for me. So yeah, glad that decision was made.
I want to read some of the lyrics out loud if you don't mind.
Sure thing.
There's that apathy that married you. You should find somebody else now who can make old problems new. Love that line. A wash of sound, the blue lights gaze. We're hand in hand, now summer fades. But really, no, it's fine. There's two types of last times. Tell us a little about what you were going on there.
I think it's I said this to you before actually. It's that kind of like the sort of fear of letting things like happen to you, that you know that the sort of your younger self, and obviously as you get older, there are things that you like you very rightly feel differently about, as should be the case as you learn more and understand yourself more. But I think at the time it was like it's very much that fear when you're like, oh, well, will I just like this will happen to me and I'll accept it kind of thing. It's that sort of the sort of fear of it, and like I think like as I said, so Train Spotting and T2 actually I was rewatched for the first time in a long time around the time I was doing this, and that really sort of fed into it. The sort of like that dopamine chasing is a bit of a buzzword, but like all that kind of stuff, like this sort of pursuit of these like perfect moments and stuff, and in sort of, and then like people kind of, I don't know, just accepting or like being like either not wanting to or being too blind to see kind of that they could like do things differently, and that like I guess it's a case of sometimes when something isn't bad enough to really change because it's not bad enough to like elicit a natural reaction. So I think it's all kind of, it's a bit more like I guess like a bit more impressionistic than some of the stuff I've done. So it was also trying to just point people in lots of directions, I guess, was the kind of aim of those lines, really. Even though there's a bit of a narrative like running through it as well, but there's a few like different intentions, I guess.
Fall into place, let us fall into place, disassociate. And I loved how the song fades out. Beautifully done. Um, I want to talk about if there's anything else you want to share about the song, go for it.
I think my favorite bit is the sort of the end section and the like. I think dive for a pretty big like tonal kind of reference point for this. Sort of sits like, I think the end bit has kind of little nods to Deceiver and that really kind of like ferocious guitar tone in some ways, and then like also it's got sort of nods to the second album as well. But Yeah, I'd say that sort of really going for a bit more of their use of harmonies as well was something that I'm a big fan of. So I think, yeah, just to sort of say like that, it was definitely like that kind of direction. That and Beach House sort of in the background really was.
Vapor Trail 23 says, um, I love the driving drums into the bridge, then the collapse into the chorus. The chiming guitars in the middle eight are great too. I fully concur with that statement. He also says, you always push your range to the high notes, but on this song in particular, you explore your lower range too, which is great. As an ex choir boy myself, I appreciate it. Nice connection there. That's a great. Thank you, Vapor Trail.
Oh, you know how it is.
um, I want to move into inspirational albums.
Sure.
I understand you have some albums right there to your side that you'd like to share and give us a little detail on why these albums are so meaningful for you.
Sure thing. I mean, obviously, this is slightly limited to what I've got in my like vinyl collection, but at the same time, I wouldn't have them if they weren't good albums. So it
Nice.
goes both ways. I think we've seen one already. This is a massive one for me, really. Like I've again I've been aware of the Cure for like the majority of my sort of teenage life and beyond, but I never really gelled with them until I sort of moved to London. Or well, no, probably actually to be fair, during university I remember getting really into Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, and I like Disintegration, but then after moving to London, I just couldn't stop listening to it in its entirety. I just sit there and be like, this is just amazing, and the title track is. I don't know. Again, like the way he uses language and like his melodies and like his voice, it's just such like a. The Cure one is, but I really struggle to say exactly what it is about them, but I could just listen to them all day, and it's kind of like I think a lot of people maybe feel like that as well. Like I know some of my friends are sort of like they probably couldn't tell you exactly what they love about the Cure. I mean, I think there's obviously a lot of things to love, like the atmospheric guitars. I think like Robert Smith's kind of approach to guitar effects and using jazz masters to like get that pick attack through flange and all this sort of like basically world building and being quite early to it is fantastic, and obviously going on at the same time as that album over there. But no, yeah, I think it's an amazingly cohesive piece, and it really takes you somewhere, and you sort of move in for a while, and you can tell that I think sort of this was his attempt at, like he said, he wanted to make like that great album, and he felt bad that he hadn't done it before this. And I think Low, obviously the Bowie album was the bit of the blueprint for it, which is another one of my very favorites. So I think you could like really see that kind of lineage in that.
So I have a tough question for you about Disintegration.
Sure.
What is your standout gold track there?
Oh,
Oh, so many to choose from.
the extended edition makes it even harder as well with like Homesick, which actually isn't on this edition, but I think I think I'd have to say Disintegration. I'd be very tempted to say obviously Pictures of You is fantastic, like obviously Fascination Street, Love Song as well is a really like it's just kind of so simple, it's perfect. I know he didn't really like that song, but well, yeah, I'll say Disintegration, and shout out actually to Too Late, which was a B-side, which I really like that song.
That's a great piece. All right, what's your next one?
Next one we've got is where's it gone? Here it is. So another like really great example of an album looking like it sounds. I mean, it's a Deceiver by Dive. It's absolutely fantastic record. I remember listening to it for the first time on a train up to Newcastle, and I was absolutely blown away by it. I sort of hadn't listened to more modern music for a little bit. I was listening to a lot of like Bill Withers and stuff at the time, and sort of everything from that kind of time period. And I was just like, wow, there's some really interesting modern stuff that I'm not listening to. The guitar tones are like, it's got sort of My Bloody Valentine like influence on it and stuff, but it feels like a really original piece. It really like amazing kind of like internal world building, I guess. All the songwriting's sublime. I think the lyrics are really interesting, and it's just really unique. Despite kind of being a pure guitar album, it shows that you can still make amazing and like original music with guitars in like this day and age. So,
Is that what type of pressing or color variant? Is that black vinyl? What is
I
that?
think that's just the black one. I don't think I have a. Yes, that is just the black one.
Is there a standout track there for you? What's one that really?
Or so I mean, so our Blankenship obviously is fantastic. I know my friends will be like, why are you not saying that? But Like Before You're Born is just absolutely like, the guitar sounds monolithic. Like it is that tone is, it's so fat. But it's really hard to sort of describe that. It's not like, it's a really delicate, like complex tone, but it's got so much weight behind it. And then this sort of super thin but really pretty lyrics. I know that's shoegaze in a nutshell, but like I could listen to that again and again. It really sort of big inspiration actually for Nothing's Like It Was Before, that song.
Yeah, you're picking some good ones. Let's go on to the next one.
Sure thing. So I'm actually gonna cheat a little bit and use another My Bloody Valentine album.
Okay.
And if I dare to start this, the eternal debate of which is their best album, is it Loveless or is it MBV? Which I believe there is a case actually for either way. That might be considered sacrilege, but I don't know what you think about that.
Let's hear it.
Oh, it's such an original like composition. Obviously, I think you can hear that sort of some of the stuff from what I understand anyway was started in the 90s, and Only Tomorrow sounds like kind of Loveless too. But it's kind of like Trainspotting, I guess, like making a sequel to something that's like so obviously a sequel, but not a sequel at all. It doesn't compete with Loveless in any way, really, which so it seems ridiculous to put them against each other. But like, it's not. It's self-referential, but not in a kind of a sort of contrived way at all. Like it's. I mean, I saw a comment once saying like, if Loveless is the journey to space, then MBV is the journey back. I think that sums it up pretty well.
Very nice. And what about a particular track?
I think Only Tomorrow. I know it's the most Loveless esque track on it, but I think I'd have to say that.
Nice. And you got some great taste in music. Any more?
Yeah, we can go for this.
Are you a big vinyl head?
I'm getting there. I usually try and get people to buy them for me rather than buying them myself, because otherwise I'd buy all of them. But I think I'm actually, as we're on vinyl, I wasn't actually going to talk about this one, but I've really been listening to them a bit for the last few days. Is this one actually, the New Abnormal by the Strokes? One of the few bands I feel that from that kind of period of time, for me personally, like I really can't listen to sort of some stuff from that era, and I think this is a byproduct of being as obsessed with it as I was, without kind of sort of cringing at my own obsession a little bit, really. And I've started to get over that, but I think that's how these things go. And I sort of like it almost, when I listen to the first Arctic Monkeys album, I feel like I'm sort of intruding on my own 18-year-old self, really. It's quite a bizarre experience. It sort of takes me back but feels irrelevant to me now. The Strokes, on the other hand, has never really happened. They really feel like they sort of aged with me. And this I bought during lockdown. It arrived. It was a nice little thing. I remember At the Door coming out, and obviously they hadn't done anything for a while. I think there was talk that they'd broken up forever. And songwriting on this album sublime. It's fantastic production. Ode to the Met. Really, I think like a got me through lockdown album, this one, to be honest. And I don't think I would have. I say that as well because I don't think I would have ever seen it coming. And then I was so happy to know it was coming, and as soon as I listened to it, I was very happy it existed. So yeah.
What about a particular track?
I love At the Door, but The melodies from "Ode to the Mets" are fantastic. They really are. I think it's an easy answer. Like Sunday's so depressing. Why Sunday's always depressing? Whatever that one's called. That's also a really good song. But the whole album's great. But "Ode to the Mets." Yeah.
Any others? I see something behind you.
Yes, there is indeed one more. So I picked this up actually the other day, which is an original version of Treasure, which has Sugar Hiccup on, and which will be the standout track as well, for sure. But it's this whole earlier Cocteau Twins kind of period. I mean, Garland's as well. Fantastic, and Robin Guthrie is a massive inspiration. I mean, I haven't actually been kind of I think deploying like that kind of guitar playing as much as I was a few years ago, but maybe it should come back a bit. I think it's amazing what he does and how kind of like beautifully simple his parts are and how much he gets out of every note and the sort of things he did with effects kind of before anyone else was thinking about them. And also how much of a sort of template for the 80s, like kind of other guitar bands, the bass sounds on this were. And I mean, The Cure sort of famously did borrow quite heavily from the Cocteau Twins. I think not everyone necessarily notices it straight away, but I think it's a great sign of what's to come as they sort of develop their sound as well through the 80s into the 90s.
Particular song?
Yeah, it's got to be Sugar Hiccup. It's got to be Sugar Hiccup.
It's pretty phenomenal. Yeah, and that's again, many of these interviews cite Cocteau Twins' major influence on their work. And I would say that actually, I was going to ask you, have you seen The Cure live?
I have. I've seen them twice actually. I saw them at Glastonbury in 2019, which was absolutely amazing, and I saw them at Christmas this Christmas, which was
nice.
Also even better than I thought it would be. Actually, it was a really quite a nice moment.
Yeah, they're now doing their North America tour, and their shows just sold out. Like, and they had
are you going?
No, I'm not. They're actually playing 20 minutes away from in the Bay Area here. I've seen them 3 or 4 times, and it's weird. Like, I would love to see him again, but I don't need to see them again.
Sure.
I have this phenomenal memory of them in my head, and that's kind of how I want it. Now, I don't know anyone that I've had a conversation with has not enjoyed a Cure show. They really go all out. They push the envelope. They play enormous set, 2 to 3 hours. Great B-sides, all that stuff. But I kind of just want Robert in my head the way I remember it. And I mean, if someone gave me a ticket, I'd be like, hell yeah, I'm going. But I didn't want to deal with all that Ticketmaster stuff. And at my age, I'm becoming a little bit more choosy on what I'm going to see. So what's next for you?
I think that's very, very fair reason as well. By the way, I like for not going. I think what am I up to? So I think we've got one more single at some point. I know Fade's only just come out, and it needs me to focus on that for a bit and do all the promo and the self A&R and all that good stuff. But yeah, I think we've got one more coming from the CP, just because of the nature of how these things work on streaming services these days. It's just not really like if you think the song can work as a single and it will get you some ground, it's kind of worth popping it out as a single. So it's gonna be one more of those, and then there'll be the full EP, which will have an extra track on as well that won't have been heard before. So there will be something new when that comes. And then I've actually started recording the stuff that's coming after, which I think is a real step up actually from this EP. I'm really happy with it. I think I'm really kind of like, well, I'll have to see what everyone else thinks, but when we get there. But I feel like I've really kind of become a bit more like sort of opened up in my singing a little bit more, like employing a few more like bits of other musical styles, like bit of other genres sort of here and there. still keeping the shoegaze kind of aesthetics there. Like the wall of guitars, the textures are always going to be like, it's always going to be important. But yeah, so I think it's a bit more kind of Jeff Buckley and stuff going in there, which is stuff I've always been very drawn to, but never kind of quite, again, kind of maybe not really back myself to execute. So there's a bit more flamboyant singing here and there, which I think you'll see like little bits of it in the next two songs that come out on this EP, and then it will make a lot more sense when it comes, I think. But yeah, and then the one other thing that I'm just thinking about doing myself is I actually really want to do some acoustic recordings again. And I haven't quite figured out the best way to do that yet, and sort of what's sort of going to be cost effective, but still kind of really deliver a good result. Because I mean, obviously, I'm a massive fan of production and effects and noise and all of that stuff. That's very important to me. But I also I'm sort of a songwriter, like first and foremost, really. And all of these songs are obviously, the production is the song in some way, but they can exist without them as well. So I'd quite like to have like a version of a few of them that don't have all of the other stuff, and you can kind of just hear the songs. But obviously, trying to work out exactly how to do that is a challenge that I'm going to have to work out. But yeah, I'll hopefully embark on that as well at some point.
What about any tours?
So we're going up to Leeds next week. So play a shoegaze all day with Last Tourist, Sunstinger, and Avalon, and then Yogi Shoegazer as well as doing some DJing afterwards. So that'll be sweet. That's what we've got booked that I can say anything about for now.
Can you tell us that date?
That's on the 27th, the 27th of May, Saturday, 27th of May.
Yeah, Sunstinger and Last Tourist, nice.
And then there's a big show in Birmingham, which I don't think we've actually announced yet, but it will be around September time, and it's again, really good lineup and shoegaze kind of city. So watch the space for that, and I'm really excited for that because I haven't played in Brum for quite a while now, so it's been too long.
If you have any questions, push them on the comment box here. We're speaking with Oliver Beardmore. We're wrapping up this wonderful talk. We were celebrating the release of his song Fade, which you can find anywhere now. He's got some upcoming music pretty soon. He's got a show next week in Leeds. Do you know who the DJ is that night? Is that Yogi?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. He's a big fan of shoegaze dream pop music. You're gonna love talking with him. You get the last word. Anything else you want to share?
I just want to say just thank you very much for having me on. It's been really nice to talk to you, and for asking really interesting questions. And I thank you to everyone for streaming the new single and supporting all the stuff, and just the whole kind of shoegaze community, and the Chrissy and everyone who's played stuff on the radio and everything. It's just and written nice things about. It's just really, really nice. Yeah.
That must feel so good. You know, you have something, you let it hatch out into the world, right? And then people respond to it positively, negatively. And I've always thought negative press, at least you got their attention, right? But you probably don't get a lot of negative feedback at all. But that must feel really satisfying to do all that work, and then boom, there it is.
I think it like the thing that I really want to do with music, I think more than anything, is that I just want to sort of, and this sounds a bit like I don't know exactly how this is going to come out, but obviously some of it's, of course, it's for me in a way, like it's what I love doing, but in a way it's also just for everyone else. And I know the feeling that I get from listening to music and how imperative it is to me, really, in some ways. And all I want to do is be able to do that for other people. So when people say, oh, they've really connected with this song, or oh, I couldn't stop listening to it and stuff, and when they genuinely mean it, and obviously sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but I think, and there's been a few ones where people really did, and it just makes you think, oh, do you know what, I can keep doing this, and it's kind of for something and for other people. And obviously if no one listened to it, I'd still write songs, but but that's sort of a big part of why I want to do it as well. So I do also want people to hear my music.
You know what? I don't. Are you? We're gonna wrap this up here. There's an actor by the name of Ethan Hawke. You familiar with his work?
Yeah.
If you can find on YouTube his 10-minute speech on tapping into creativity,
Yeah.
it's very powerful. It hits on these wonderful points that we've been talking about today. And I will say that, you know, one thing I found about you and just learning about who you are as a person, as an artist, your creative drive, this ambition, you have this intrepid feeling approach to things. You don't seem very like a deer in the headlights, even though it might be challenging and a little scary at times.
I was last night. Jesus Christ, terrified.
But you come across very confident in the work that you do. And I really appreciate that about you. We're going to end here on something that a bright star. Are you familiar with the bright star?
Yes, my favorite poem.
John Keats. I'm not going to read the whole poem. I'm just going to read the last bit here. And if you want to respond, awesome. If not, great. Pillowed upon my fair love's ripening breast, to feel forever its soft fall and swell, awake forever in sweet unrest, still to hear her tender taken breath, and so live ever, or else swoon to death. Any comments on that? What is about Keats?
I think that poem just seems to have resonated with a lot of people who also wrote stuff, and it's that kind of like observant thing. I think really that the sort of like it touches on kind of being able to sort of see everything. And like, I'm not saying, I mean, I kind of back my self-awareness to an extent. I'm not saying I'm all seeing or knowing, but like, it's like when Tom York talks about like being kind of like an observer and being privileged enough to it be his job to kind of like write about these situations, and like it being David Bowie's favorite like poem as well. I think that's a certain element of it that I've always like enjoyed, for sure.
Thank you for sharing your observation. My name is W, host of the High Art on the Edge page. Had a wonderful conversation here with rising new talent, Oliver Beardmore. We wish you all the best in your success. Thank you so much for taking your busy time to speak with me. Much appreciated. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. You know how to support Oliver. Head on over to his Facebook page, Bandcamp. He has a show next week, as we mentioned, out in Leeds. So hopefully you can join that as well and participate. That's it. Keep listening to great music. It's always out there. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Oliver.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Ciao.